Unbroken, healing through storytelling.
Hello, I am Madeleine Black and I am the host of Unbroken, Healing Through Storytelling, the show where we explore people's stories because I really believe in the power that comes when we hear someone else's story. Today, my guest is Tre Lowe. He is a London-based musician, a mentor and entrepreneur, a producer, songwriter of the award-winning band Architects, notable for their chart-topping song Body Groove, a regular music contributor on ITN News, and landlord and property investor with 20 years of experience. Additionally, he has a successful coaching and consultancy company called Alpha Clique, specialising in success and performance coaching for entrepreneurs and business owners. He is a passionate wellness advocate. As a long life sufferer, he campaigns for tinnitus awareness, reaching an audience of millions. He has appeared on BBC Breakfast News, ITV, ITN News, BBC Radio, BBC 5 Live, The Sun, and numerous other places. So welcome to the show. Tre, how are you doing?
I am good. Loving the sun that's finally reared its head in London. So yeah, I'm always happy when the sun shines.
Even in Scotland, it's made its way. So yay for the sun.
Yeah.
So because my show is called Unbroken, the very first question I ask all my guests is, what does that word unbroken mean to you?
What does unbroken mean? It just means that whatever life throws at you, you remain standing tall, confident, proud. But crucially, you are someone that has other people remain tall, standing and proud. That's what unbroken is. It's like nothing bends you, nothing breaks you. You're there standing for yourself and for others as well.
I love that definition. You know, every week I ask people the same question and every week I get a different variation. But yeah, to stand tall and strong and proud is a bit like being a tree, isn't it? Just learning to bend in the wind when everything's going.
Exactly.
And you really, it's fair to say, have had a catalogue of incidents throughout your life.
Oh God, where do we start? How long have we got? When I look back at my life, even when I go back to my parents, my dad was the only survivor of 8 siblings. He had 7 brothers and sisters die. He only survived because he was taken from his village in Nigeria to another one. My mum, she didn't grow up with her parents. She was kind of moved from pillar to post. Her mum died young, along with her brother who died as a baby. So I think I've come from, I always say, like, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and my parents are giants. And I think it's their ability to remain unbroken, it's definitely given me that strength as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so in terms of sort of my story, I guess in terms of where it kind of started in terms of having to deal with stuff was age 15. I was rushed to hospital with appendicitis. So I had the appendectomy, had my appendix removed. That was all great and fine. And about 3 or 4 days later, after that in hospital, a nurse said to me, "Are you doing all right? Do you want anything for the pain?" No, I was fine, but I felt groggy, and I quite liked that groggy feeling. So I thought, oh, if she gives me anything, maybe I'm going to feel more groggy, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
So she gave me this tablet called Stemetil, which is an antiemetic, stops you vomiting. I don't know why. I was only 15 years old at the time. I then suffered what's called an ocular gyrate crisis.
Yes, I had never heard of this before. So can you explain to people exactly what that means? Or the side effects of it for a start?
Yeah, it's horrific, right? So basically your body goes rigid. You arch back, literally in a very violent way. Like you have no control over it. You go into this spasm, you arch back, and your neck contorts itself to a level of extension that you didn't think was even possible, like it's going to snap. And the worst symptom is that your eyes literally roll back in your head, which is why it's called ocular, because it's significant because your eyes does this thing. I describe it as paralysis, but it's not, because paralysis is when you go limp. But I just say that because most people get it.
Yes.
But in effect, it's worse than paralysis.
It's almost contortionist, isn't it? Involuntary contortionist.
So it's spasm. It's almost like it's being locked in your body, like having locked-in syndrome, which for most people is probably the most scariest thing that could ever happen to the human body. But it's a violent locked-in syndrome. So you're contorted in the worst way, where you lose control of everything. Your head is arched back to the point you could see behind you. I was in the bed, and I could see the wall behind me, and you could only have control of your eyeballs. And the funny thing is, as a child, I was always a bit of a loner. And I had a lot of phobias as a kid. And one of my worst ones was a fear of being confined in a small space, like a coffin or something.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am locked in your body, and it doesn't get more confined than your own body. So here I'm age 15. Biggest fear is that it's happening in real time. Luckily, they gave me an antidote. I was locked in probably for about 20 minutes. They gave me an antidote, a drug called benzotropin. I came out of this ocular crisis, and I was fine. I thought, oh my God, I never want to go through that again, because whilst you're locked in, the terror is I'm going to be stuck like this forever.
Yes.
You know, I can hear my parents around the bed, the nurses, the doctors, and you're just powerless in your own body. It's like being super glued in the worst possible positions. I'm like, thank God that's all over. The terror passed.
I imagine it must have been very frightening to witness as well for your parents.
God, yeah, because I can hear my parents freaking out, because obviously it looks violent, right? It's not like normal paralysis where you just go limp and you probably look quite peaceful. This is your body is contorted and you have no control over it. So I was fine. But about 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, I could feel the sensation, because now I could recognize it's happening again. So my brain is thinking, wait a second, I've been given this antidote. Why am I going back into this spasm again? So you can imagine what your brain does at that point there. Your brain is freaking out and there is nothing you can do. So I'm thinking, if they've given me the antidote, that means I'm going to be stuck like this for the rest of my life. The terror, I mean, I would not wish that on my worst enemy, ever. Because the terror you go through, losing your body in such a violent way, second time is like, oh my God, this is it. You don't even have the ability to kill yourself if you want to, you're stuck, right? So this happens again, and this time now, the nurses who are kind of fairly calm first time around are now frantic. The doctors are frantic. My parents are losing their mind, and my family is around the bed. And I'm thinking, wow, this is it. Nothing that they can do. And I was like that probably for about an hour or something like that. So you can imagine being locked in your body and they're frantic. They've then given me a bigger dose of this benzotropin, and it didn't work at first, but eventually I started to kind of gain control and my body started to unlock itself, except this time I wasn't the same. So when I came out of it the second time, my first thing I said to my parents was, how could everyone looks really strange? Everyone looks weird. It's like I'd sort of gone into this dream, like looking at life beyond the veil.
Okay.
Everyone seemed a bit cartoony, not quite the same. I had this strange sensation, physical sensation in the back of my head. And I had this noise in my ears that wasn't there before. And I said to my parents, Mum, Dad, can't you hear that noise? Can nobody hear this noise? There was this faint ringing. None of this was there before I went into the second spasm. All of it was there now. So the nurses say to me and my parents, don't worry, it'll wear off. It's just the effects of the drugs. And I'm just standing in. I hope it does, because I'll take that over and have a spasm. But my body is almost on guard, thinking, well, it happened before, I might go into spasm again. And all these symptoms didn't go. They just got worse and worse and worse. So the next 2 years after that was one doctor, another doctor, this tablet, that thing. I mean, I was taken everywhere, every single test that you can imagine. And after that, I just had to learn to start living with it.
So nobody could really name it or diagnose it and say what was going on at that point?
At that point, I didn't even know of the word tinnitus to explain the ringing in the ears. I didn't know what anything was. And I just had to get on with life. So I was 15, back to school. And you imagine what it's like as a teenager with all the other stuff you're dealing with, exams, etc., living in this kind of dream-like state with this faint ringing in your ears that was terrible at night, and with this sensation in your head. And of the three, I guess the worst was this dream feeling and the sensation. So, I went through school, went to college, went to university, got a degree in advertising. Halfway through university, we had a huge underground record. By this time, my brother Ashley and I were making music. And it's funny, when I look back, my love for music started young. It was one of my youngest passions was music. So I had these three passions. One was I grew up Catholic, so I had faith in God. My parents were religious. Second, I had this real love of music. And the third one, I just had the love of, I didn't know it at the time, but I was obsessed with encyclopedias. In my culture, in Nigerian culture, everyone had these Britannica, encyclopedias, these red ones. I don't know if you had the same. You have that knowing smile about you. There.
Yes, there was a shelf in our house. I'm one of 5, and I can just picture them all on the shelf. Yep.
And I can imagine your culture being Jewish is the same thing. There's such an emphasis on learning, right?
Yes.
Like it's all about you've got to be a lawyer or a doctor, or that was all it was about being. I mean, it was beaten into us. But I had this passion and this love of historical figures. I mean, anyone, a Galileo, I don't know, Socrates, Brunel, whoever it might be.
So you had a real thirst for knowledge.
I had a thirst for knowledge, but I had this weird love, and I don't know why. I had a love of people who did something so amazing in their life that years after they died, we're still reading about them, right? I don't know why. I was one of these kids that had this kind of esoteric way of thinking.
It was the change makers, isn't it? And the thought leaders.
Yeah. It was weird because when I was a kid, I loved cars, but I thought I could invent my own. I remember trying to build an internal combustion engine out of a tin can.
As you do, yes.
Yeah, it looked like a cylinder. And then I thought, no, maybe a 4-stroke engine is going to be a bit hard. Maybe let's try a 2-stroke. I was probably 7 years old. What 7-year-old thinks about building cars? I would think about Darwinism and imagine. And this was one thing I learned later was one of the reasons why I suffered so much was because of my thoughts. I was trying to hold 2 opposing thoughts at the same time as a child. So on the one hand, I was this Catholic kid who believes in heaven and hell, etc. But I also used to fantasize and think about Darwinism.
Yes, it's very right side and left side of your brain, isn't it?
Yeah, but it then exposes you to massive amounts of anxiety if you've got the right stimulus.
Yes.
And 15 years old, the right thing came away. I learned all of this later. I was able to put the pieces together. So that was my background, this love of music, love of historical figures. And I used to have a fear of death because of this Darwinism versus Christianity. And I used to think, but I can actually cheat death if I do something so amazing in life and I end up in an encyclopedia. One day, if someone reads about me like I'm reading about these historic figures, it means I don't die. So here I am going through all of this stuff years later, and those things kept me going. One was faith in God, that perhaps there's a reason for why I'm suffering. The second one was, before I die, I want to do something so amazing that I remember, because I always thought I'm dying. I've been to every doctor in planet Earth, and no one can do anything, so I'm going to die eventually because these symptoms are getting worse, and it will either kill me or I'll have to kill me because that's the only control I have.
Yes, you felt suicidal, didn't you? Because it was just getting too much for your mind.
Exactly. But it wasn't necessarily suicidal. It was more kind of increasingly getting more fed up. I love life. It wasn't like I was losing the will to life. I was fed up with it. Yeah. And I was able to get through life thinking, well, if it gets bad, I can jump off the building.
Yep. No, I have been in that place where I didn't want to die, but I just wanted everything to stop.
To stop, yeah. But being Catholic, it was kind of like an absolute sin to yourself.
Yes, you wouldn't get in.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine, it's almost like the frustration of, I can't even bloody kill myself. So I have to suffer this stuff. And all of that stuff really does mess with your brain, because I was the opposite of your podcast. I was well and truly broken. Yeah. And I just lived life in terms of just surviving each day when the days weren't bad, well, the days weren't good. I just surviving, but I was a bit of a broken soul. But at the same time, because I had this talent, this love, this passion for music and this skill, I had some crazy highs as well. So, we had this underground record, and in the year 2000, I was 25 at the time, we had Body Grooves, and suddenly here I am, childhood dream of one day being on top of the pops. And I do it twice.
You did it, yes, you did it.
I did it, and I was like, yeah. I remember I looked.
So for most of us, we just kind of dream of being in the audience, but you dreamt of being on the stage.
No, and it was so real for me that I didn't see any reason why it wouldn't happen, because I was that kind of child. I was always a dreamer, so it was like, if I can dream it, it's possible. And I got a lot of that from my dad, because he had a dream when he was a kid, as this semi-orphan pretty much. He used to say, one day I'm going to be on the white man's plane, I'm coming to London, I'm going to be rich. And he did it on paper when we grew up poor. But on paper, my dad was a multi-millionaire. On paper, because he was a landlord. But in reality, we were poor because he never had any blood tenants, right? So I just kind of had it, well, if I have a dream, if I can dream it and think it's going to happen. So here I was. It was like the highest of the highs, on top of the pops. And, we got flown to New York. We were supposed to perform on the same building. I think the Beatles performed on, or U2. I can't remember who it was. But in the nighttime by myself, I was dealing with the tinnitus. I was dealing with the unreal feelings. I was dealing with the head pressure. And one thing I look forward to when I'd get paid for a remix or something was like, yes, I can go and get another brain scan. Because it got to the point I was paying for my own brain scan because this pressure was getting so unbearable that each time the neurosurgeon would say to me, good news, there's nothing wrong with you, I'd be sat there distraught.
Yes, because you wanted to understand. Yes, if they told you, I get that you wanted to understand what's going on.
Imagine living a life of, I hope they say I've got a brain tumor, or I hope they say this is wrong with me. because I had no answers and everything was getting worse and worse. And that was my life. It was the highest of highs, amazing things. I remember one time we did a party in the park and performed for the royal family, and Beyonce was there. And I remember just the surrealness of Destiny's Child, Beyonce, all of these other celebs. I'm thinking, trying to pluck up the courage to go and chat out Beyonce.
If I tell my girls that I know someone who's been with Beyonce, they would, oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
But can you
be
imagine
very
that?
jealous.
Their childhood dreams
Yeah.
happening, but also dealing with a nightmare, and that was life. Dreams, nightmares.
So it's a real
nightmares.
contrast you're holding, isn't it, in your hands the whole time, the
Yeah.
paradox, the highs and the lows. So you did eventually, though, I think you read a blog or something, didn't you? And you discovered what this condition was.
Yes, I mean, the discovery itself was traumatic. So I started DJing because I didn't relate the tinnitus to hearing damage or anything like that. I started DJing. I've always been a noise addict. I mean, growing up in a family like mine, parties were everywhere. I grew up in Notting Hill, it's a very West Indian neighborhood, parties everywhere. Then back home, Nigerian culture, parties everywhere. So I was a real noise addict. But I never related the tinnitus that started with this episode with hearing and, noises and louds. My tinnitus started to become one of the worst symptoms. I DJ'd at a club, I think it was Sugar Hut in Fulham. It was 2008. I then had kind of not lost the will to live, but I was getting to that point. The head pressure was so bad, there was no answers, and I was literally getting to that point, Trey, you know what? You might have to hop off the building. I know you're not suicidal in that way, but you're getting to the point that you won't be able to cope with this level of head pressure, this dream feeling, and the tinnitus. It's like my one love, passion, music was slipping away from me. I DJ in this club. The speakers were behind, crazy loud, and the manager was just getting me drunk. And the more drunk I got, the longer I stayed. And I was very insecure as well as a kid. Can you imagine as a kid, the prime in your development, you're dealing with this kind of health stuff. So I never really got to develop a level of confidence. And I stayed a bit longer even after my shift because there was a couple of girls there. I wanted to kind of look cool. And I stayed in front of these bloody speakers. So the next day I woke up and I was deaf, about 80% deaf. My tinnitus, which was about a 9 out of 10 in terms of being unbearable, became a 20 out of 10. And I was literally at that point of, right, time's up. Time's up. Time's up. Like, you can't live like this. So you literally have to decide now. You better go and find a train station and jump in front of a train or off a building, or you better dig deeper than you've ever known, and you better find out what's wrong with you because you need an answer. You've probably only got a couple of days to do this. Now, like I said, I wasn't suicidal in that way. I think people are suicidal, it's very specific. I was just fed up. So I dug deep, searched, and I just didn't give up. So obviously by now, 2008, there was a lot more stuff on the internet because 1990, when it happened to me, forget about the internet, right? And I came across a blog, I believe it was by someone calling herself Star Child, and she described herself like, every day feels like a dream. And you can imagine, over the years, I've searched. I mean, a bright bloody kid like I was, searched everything you can imagine. I don't know why this one time of searching, I don't know what happened, but this came up, and she said, life is like a dream, and she said the word derealization, like my derealization, blah, 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 blah. I went, oh, what? There's a name for this thing, derealization. And my God, I forgot about the fact that I was deaf at this point, that my tinnitus was screaming away. I was an excited child, well, not a child, I mean, I was an adult at this point, crying my eyes out and literally Googling the word derealization. And it all started to come to me. I got what derealization was.
So for those that don't know, you explain what derealization is.
So derealization is a dissociative disorder. There's two of them. One's called derealization, where it feels like you're not really here, like life is a dream, like you're living life beyond, like behind a veil. Everything doesn't look quite real. Then its sister condition is called depersonalization. It feels like your limbs, your body isn't yours. Both of them are dissociative disorders, and both of them often come about as a result of trauma.
Yes, I had disassociation for years as well, so I totally get it.
Yeah. So I pieced together what happened. Age 15, here I am with this fear of enclosed spaces and all these other fears that I had. I've got given a drug. I've got locked into my body twice. It's the second time that was key, because the second time my brain went into this child can't handle this level of trauma. Let me take him almost out of his body. You know, when people say they've been attacked or something happened to them, they say it felt like it was happening to someone else.
Yes.
Your brain does that to disassociate you from the level of trauma, because your amygdala's gone crazy, your limbic system's gone crazy, your fight or flight's gone crazy, that there's nowhere to run to. It almost parks you in a safe space. But what my brain didn't do was say, it's all right now, you can let go, come back to reality. So then the new panic became the feelings that I had, which was strange, and the fact that the doctors couldn't tell me what was going on. So that then became this self-fulfilling vicious circle. And that led to my disassociation getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
The tension in my head got deeper and deeper and deeper. And the tinnitus really probably just got worse because I became a musician and a noise addict.
Yeah, that didn't help.
It didn't help. It was stress-induced and then made worse by noise exposure.
And what did you do to help yourself once you realised this was derealisation, a form of disassociation? What helped you to come to terms with it or to get over it?
So that in itself, and that's the first key to recovery, isn't it? It's understanding.
Yes.
Knowing about it, seeing something. Because now once you have answers, you've got a way to go. Because the brain doesn't like not having answers. Our brains are hardwired. Sorry, let me just put my phone up. Our brains are actually hardwired to always look for danger. That's what the amygdala does.
Yep.
It's always looking, is there danger? Is there a saber-toothed tiger? Is that cave safe? And in this modern era, we don't have those type of dangers. So the brain's looking for any other type of danger, which is why, in this lockdown, this epidemic of anxiety.
Hopefully when this episode is aired, we won't be in lockdown anymore.
Oh, yeah.
But yes.
I mean, I still almost call it a bit of a lockdown because I think people in this residual
yes,
space.
We are filming it, recording this during the lockdown. Yeah.
So what was the question? My brain went into lockdown mode just then. You
were talking about lockdown. I was asking you, what did you do to help yourself?
Yeah. That's the thing. So the first step is understanding. The minute I could understand it, I knew it was an anxiety disorder. And most people would know once you research how to do with anxiety. You want to get into the body.
Mm-hmm.
You want to deep breathe. You want to start to calm down the amygdala, because what happens is your amygdala gets stuck on 10. And for those that don't know, the amygdala is that little almond sort of size thing I can't remember what part of the brain, but in the lower brain, I guess you would call it. It's that basic survival lizard brain designed to keep you safe. But when that gets locked onto this high alert, it means that your body's never calm. You won't realize it, but you're probably shallow breathing. You're probably always listening out for stuff. You're on the lookout for danger. You're probably always scanning. I do that a lot. I used to always be in my body, not out there in the world, scanning my body. What's that new thing, sensation? So knowing that, I just thought, right, calm it down, deep breathing, meditation, obviously reading up about it. And being a nerd helped me because I was able to understand it at a neurological level. I could get it to the point that I would meet doctors and they'd ask me, are you a doctor? That really held me in good stead. This nerd that read encyclopedias was able to understand it. Once you understand something, it loses its power, power of fear. So I did deep breathing, did exercising, and within about 3-4 weeks, the head pressure went.
It sounds like what you're saying is that you did some mindfulness and you did some connecting or grounding work.
Massive amounts of mindfulness and grounding work. The head pressure, which was, when I say it felt like a miracle, and the head pressure was probably the worst symptom because it's like my head was in a vice. But that going in about 3 or 4 weeks just taught me the power of the mind.
Yes.
The power of self. The power to become unbroken based on our own thoughts, the mindset, because everything comes from the mind. Everything comes from the meaning we give things. That went, and I was just on a roll at that point because suddenly the anxiety just started to melt. Now, the tinnitus never went. That then became the hardest one because tinnitus at that point, I paid the price, right?
Yes.
I paid the price of massive hearing damage by DJing in this place, but it was the best thing I could ever do because that's what led me to recovery. So yeah, that was it. The derealization is still there, but all of it just lost its fear. And eventually I went and saw a professor who was the only professor, I believe, in London that dealt with derealization. And he said to me, what do you think happened? And I explained it. He goes, you are spot on. He goes, I've never had a patient come in here and explain it the way you have. You are so spot on. The way you've explained how you got it and what's kept it going. And that's the great thing about it. And that's why all the time I had these things is there's a reason why I'm suffering. I knew that. My faith, not just in faith in God, but my faith in there's a reason for this. There's a reason why I've gone through so much trauma because there's a gift that I've been given. And I call that pain juice. There is something about pain. You know, they say hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
I believe that hurt people heal people.
Or healed people as well.
Yeah, and heal people. But it's the hurt and the pain that gives you the capacity, the know-how, the desire and the drive and the purpose to heal others.
Yes.
Right? Because you either go into a pity party, or you go into indifference, or you go into, you know what, on my watch, while I'm alive, you are not going to suffer.
But that's a choice that you're making, though, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that I'm lucky because I achieved what people consider a dream. being a pop star.
Yep.
Most people want that. Once I've got money, once I'm a pop star, I got there and I thought, this isn't it. I was very lucky to have achieved that because it wasn't it. And I was surrounded by a lot of other pop stars, celebrities, models, millionaires, billionaires. And some of them were the most unhappy people you could ever be around. The facade so that people on the outside look real, but when you're on the inside looking at these other celebrities, was like, that's not it. So I actually discovered that what was it for me was the ability to make a difference to other people.
Yeah.
And I had the best grounding because no matter what you'd gone through in your life, I'd gone through that as well. You know, it wasn't like something that I'd read in a book. I'd lived it. So you can't tell me you're not powerful. You can't tell me you're not great. You can't tell me you're not unstoppable. I know you are because I've been there and I know what it's like to use all that pain and come out just smashing life.
But it sounds as if now you're saying that using this pain is your purpose in life, to serve other people.
Yeah. My purpose used to be I want to be a pop star. You know, not necessarily famous, but I wanted to be a successful musician. My purpose now is I want people to get their greatness now.
Yes.
And I say now because most people live a delayed life. When I get this then, when that happens then, when I pay off my mortgage then, when I do this then, when I finish college then, and then they die.
But we hear that so much, don't we? If I could get a partner, if I get a new car or a new job, or when I go on holiday, I'll relax. And you think, well, it's now. Now you're living your life. You know, what are you going to do with it? Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. All we have is now. And you know, we were speaking about my brother, Ashley, he passed away before we started recording.
It was February 2020, wasn't it?
Yeah,
actually, he died on February the 2nd, which was my mum and my brother's birthday.
Yeah. It just even that day, I mean, recalling it was just hard. It was painful. I got a call from my dad and I knew it was serious. You know, you get calls and you just know instinctively, this call is going to be something serious. And my dad was crying. And my dad never cries. He's a typical Nigerian strong man. I probably heard him cry 3 times in my 46 years on planet Earth. And he was crying and just saying, your brother. And I actually knew that my brother was probably not going to make it. I don't know how.
Had he been unwell, Ashley, or?
We hadn't seen him as much for the preceding 3 years. Ashley kind of just did his own thing and was sort of just did his own thing. And, but he had been unwell. He'd been vomiting. There were times when he couldn't even walk down the street without being really tired. And he was, you know, he was a single guy and a typical bloke. And I say for any blokes that are listening to this podcast, take your bloody health seriously because men tend not to. I do just because I've been through so much stuff. I spend more time in hospitals than I've been spent in nightclubs. But most men don't. And Ashley was one of those guys. And, you know, COVID was there. And apparently he wondered whether he had COVID. But because at the time we didn't know the severity of COVID, he just carried on living. And we suspect that's what killed him was COVID afterwards. It didn't say that in the autopsy, but from looking at what he did have, like blood sepsis and a few things, they're very classic markers.
Yes.
COVID, he was asthmatic when he was young. He didn't take his health seriously. He collapsed in his house, and there was no one there for him. But what was really poignant for me was the police wouldn't let me see him, but I remember them saying, his passport is here. My brother was excited in that year when he passed away. He just got back into music. Like, music was very traumatic for him, the whole body groove and all of our success, because he absolutely hated fame with a passion. And here he is in a band with these 3 good-looking, good-looking, gorgeous and black singer and his 2 black brothers, and the record label was like, yes, they're going to be this beautiful black supergroup, talented. And that was my brother's worst nightmare. But he kind of went along with it, even though he didn't want to. And he was never the same after that. So he became a bit, I wouldn't say totally reclusive, but he was, you know, not really a fan of it. But, you know, in that last year, he suddenly come out of his shell and he wanted to go to New York and shoot these videos. And I remember the policeman said his passport is here. And he had collapsed to the bottom of his stairs and he was only a few feet away from the passport on the other side of the door. And I remember, literally, it's probably about 3 weeks after he died, I was at, you know about the Landmark Forum. That made a big difference in my life as well. I was at a Landmark Forum that I did again. And I remember getting up and I shared that story. And that's why I'm sharing it now in your podcast. People live like tomorrow is guaranteed. Like, my brother had this whole year planned of New York, video, after years of kind of being put off the music industry, being excited again, but he never actually got to live it. And that's why I say I'm a real stand for people being present to their greatness and living now.
Yes.
Not tomorrow, but right now, because tomorrow is not promised. you know, and that's the thing that I've left with my brother's death. Yeah, it was sad. Yeah, it was tragic. I miss him every single day. But what I choose to do is celebrate his life, celebrate who he was as a person. He was always the most inspiring, beautiful, amazing soul. And so I created a foundation in his name called Music Beats Life. And that's to give young people a chance that they get present to their greatness right now, especially young creatives, because they've been through the, you know, just been through hell in the last 18 months or so, or, you know, 14 months. And again, that's how I now react to pain. That's how I react to adversity. It was the pain that I went through that taught me, doesn't matter what life throws at you. That's only going to make you stronger.
Yeah, for everything that you've gone through, you can turn your pain into something better. And that's
Absolutely.
exactly what you've done.
Yeah, because of the suffering I went through, when I discovered what was wrong with me, it led me to doing things like the Landmark Forum.
And for people that are listening that don't know what the Landmark Forum is, can you just explain a little bit about it?
The Landmark Forum is a personal development company, and they're really good because they deal with personal development at the level of ontology, and by that I mean being. Because most people live in the world of doing and having, right? If only I could just have $1 million, then I could do what I want, and then I could be happy. We have it backwards, right? And it's very external. I need money, or I need a perfect partner, like what we said earlier. Whereas ontological way of learning is about being.
Yeah.
Because you can choose being in the moment. My brother died. I could be sad, I could be broken, or I could be celebratory of his life. I could be grateful for the life that he's had. I could be in the wonder of, wow, I'm going to use his life to make a difference. We have control of who we're being. We don't have control of what the world's going to do. It's going to give you cancer. You better take that. It's going to give you Parkinson's disease. You better take that. But we have control of who we're going to be in the face of what life throws at us. And I'm grateful for the pain I went through, because I wouldn't have done Landmark, wouldn't have read all the books and done all the training. I mean, it wasn't just Landmark. I've done a ton of different stuff because I became obsessed about mindset. I became obsessed about being able to heal myself, because I lost faith in tablets, drugs. I've tried all of them. They didn't bloody work. They were a waste of time. Not that I'm saying to people not to take it, but before you go down the road of antidepressants and all that kind of stuff, trust your body's ability to heal. And a lot of that starts with the quality of your thoughts.
Yes, it's where we put our attention, isn't it?
Yeah, because energy flows where your attention goes. And I know that my energy goes where you know, when I'm grateful for life, when I'm forgiving, when energy and being comes through that, anything is possible in that space. So I take everything that life throws at me. You know, my parents got COVID. I thought I was going to lose my dad. I'd look after them. My partner got sick, really, really sick. And who I am in the face of it all is just bring it on.
Yeah. And now you work as a coach, don't you? And you help others to empower themselves to realize it's always an inside job. It's not our external world that matters. It's our internal world. Tell us a little bit about your coaching then, and how people can get more information. Yeah,
so I started a company called Alpha Clique, and the reason why I called it Alpha Clique or Clique is it's really about creating a clique or a crew of people who are really dedicated to operating at the level of alpha. And I don't mean the old alpha, like, oh, alpha male, strong, dominant. No. By alpha, I mean people who are willing to pass the torch on. That's what it is. I mean, it's the poem by George Bernard Shaw when he talks about, oh, God, I wish I had it actually here to say to you, but check it out. It ends up basically about passing the torch on to future generations. I can't remember it offhand. But that's the kind of people I coach. I don't care if you can afford to pay me. I'm not interested. I need to know that once you get these skills, you're going to use it in service of others.
So a little bit like your legacy then, really, isn't it?
For me, legacy is everything. Like my brother Ashley's legacy is, everyone that dances to Body Groovy's legacy continues, because it's such a happy, uplifting record.
Yes. And once you hear it in the morning, it's in my head for about 3 days. It doesn't go.
But also his legacy lives through me, where who he was for people carries on through me. So I only coach people who are not about themselves, because I've seen what it's like when it's self. I've been in the music industry. It's a very miserable way to go. It's all about me. What can I have for me? Me, more money, more women, more. No, it's boring. What are you willing to do for others? That's what I want to hear. So I tend to coach people who are like in the world of, I want to do this. I, of course, make money, because it is success coaching. You know, I love success. I love achievement. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a typical Nigerian, right? That's important for us. But it has to be people who want to make a difference in the lives of other people. That's who I tend to coach. And the reason why is because my empowering content is that everyone on planet Earth gets their greatness. I can't do it. So I've got to create a clique, an alpha clique, a squad, a crew that's going to start sharing this message. To truly be great, it's about service to others.
Absolutely.
I've got to spread that message, and that's what my coaching is about. So yeah, you're going to get the results of, 3x or 4x or 5x in your income. Yeah, you might meet the person of your dreams. Yeah, you're going to get unstoppable, unshakable mindset. So you are no longer a victim to life. You're a victor in life. But ultimately, what's going to drive you is your own purpose that's bigger than you. I want you to do something that makes a difference to people in this world. It may not be as big as my vision. It could be niched. It could be a certain type of person, but it can't be about you. And that's who I coach. People who are operating at the level of alpha who want to make a difference to the world, because ultimately, that's the thing. I can't think of a higher purpose than that, personally. That's just me. It's a bit like what you're doing with your podcast. It's about making a difference to others. Because had I heard this podcast when I was 16, 17, in the throes of suffering, and someone had shared how I'm sharing, that could have made all the difference.
Absolutely.
Because people like you did make a difference to me. There's so many people that I listened to over the years that kept me going. There was a woman called Dr. Claire Weeks, an Australian woman, and she used to talk about anxiety and things like that. Listening to her words made the biggest difference. That's why I do so many podcasts. I do so much talking and coaching people.
And don't stop it. It's a brilliant message that you're putting out there, and I defy anyone that listens to this not to be motivated by your energy. So Tre, it just leaves me to thank you so much. I'm really grateful that you took time out. It was like third time lucky for us to get this interview, but we got there in the end. So grateful for you for coming on the show. There's like so much wisdom emanating from you. It's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor and a privilege to be on your podcast, and I can't wait to hear it.
Yay, you're welcome.
Unbroken, healing through storytelling.